G'day YouTube, Warbles on a lot here with part 2 of my book review of The Biggest Estate on Earth, How Aborigines Made Australia. Copyright Bill Gammage, published by Allen and Unwin, 2011. ISBN number 9781742377483. In part 1 we had a look at the illustrations and we saw something of what Australia used to look like. Back in the days when all the Australians knew how the landscape worked and they knew how to work the landscape. So I said we'd have a little bit of a look at what Bill Gammage has to say about Australian Aboriginal religion. Page 123. We start Heaven on Earth. Okay, all religions attempt to do two things: to explain existence and to regulate behaviour. Aboriginal religion integrated these by assuming the spiritual parity of all life and by subjecting every aspect of it to overwhelming religious sanction. This pivoted on the dreaming, a word tolerably conveying the sense of timelessness central to Aboriginal belief. Quote, "The great and specifically Australian contribution to religious thought," Ted Strello declared, "has been the unquestioning Aboriginal conviction that there was no division between time and eternity. The dreaming conceives an unchangeable universe, hence free of time. This can be so because the universe is not natural, it was made from darkness by God. Who made God and darkness no one knows. They are as much puzzles as chance and death. No religion has solved them, but denying time makes them easier to pass over, and people accept that although it is worthy to strive to understand, they are not meant to know. Across Australia, the creation story is essentially the same. God made light, brought into being spirits and creator ancestors, and set down eternal law for all creation. The creator ancestors accepted the law or suffered if they didn't, and made epic journeys across a formless space, giving land and sea substance and shape before settling to rest in a place important to them. They are there still, and where they went still bears the marks of their trials and adventures. All things derive from their presence or deeds and are ruled by the law they passed on. Since universe and law never change, time is irrelevant, as in a dream. Change and time exist only as cycles, birth and death, the passage of stars and seasons, journeys, encounters, and after 1788 the appearance of plants and animals seeming new but always there. Cycles are eddies, ending where they begin or eclipsed by larger cycles. Travel by death, for example, or seasons by lifespans. Eddies exist not on a river of life, for a river has a beginning and end, but on bigger eddies in a boundless pool. Time is an eddy. The pool is timeless. Pool, eddies and law are the dreaming. The dreaming has two rules: obey the law and leave the world as you found it. Not better or worse, for God judges that, but the same. The first rule enforces and exists for the second. Together they let place dominate time and translate well understood ecological associations into social religions: kin, marriage, diplomacy, trade, and so on. They apply the same religions and obligations to all creation, guarding the universe by outlawing fundamental change, so making all creatures conservationist and conservative. In most other societies, an urge for change is so entrenched as to be thought natural, nor is it clear that people entirely succeeded in leaving the world as they found it. But they dedicated their lives to conserving what they inherited, and within the perception of living generations they generally succeeded. The dreaming is comprehensive, as you would expect of a people with much spare time. It gives and explains a role to every part of creation and decrees how each must act. This does not stifle human curiosity, but innovation and creativity become means, not ends. Eddies not the pool, and do not disturb a sense that the fundamentals of existence are beyond challenge or improvement. About 1838, Adelaide missionaries took two natives lately tattooed to their home and spoke of the rite they had undergone, the origin of which is ascribed to a species of red kangaroo. endeavouring to show them the foolishness of the practice, and observing of Jehovah that he alone was to be feared and not the red kangaroo, for they believe the red kangaroos will kill them if they do not thus cut themselves. One of them, growing angry, said, "Why do you charge us with a lie, i.e. reject our opinion? We do not charge you with lies. What you believe and speak of Jehovah is good, and what we believe is good." We replied that only on one side could the truth be, and that was on our side. "Very well," he had answered, "then I am a liar, and you speak the truth. I shall not speak another word. You may now speak." A fatalist theology is hard to undermine. Christians generally manage it by aggressive missionising and the plenty of Western goods. This rarely impressed Aborigines. Few, if any, troubled over the questions others ask Westerners. Why do you have more than us? They knew why. The dreaming made it so. All Australia obeyed the dreaming. By world standards, this is a vast area for a single belief system to hold sway, and in itself cause for thinking Australia a single estate, albeit with many managers. Australia included Tasmania, which some say did not have the dreaming, but when the last full-blood person in Tasmania died in May 1876, others had no notion of a dreaming on the mainland either. Tasmanians managed land as mainlanders did, and with similar mindsets. Oyster Bay people called gum trees countrymen, other groups claimed other trees, and people told Robinson, "Moyni was hurled from heaven and dwelt on the earth, and died and was turned into a stone, and is at Cox's Bight," which was his own country. Later a small ant first made the natives. In what records survive of Tasmanian practice, in their links and duties of care with named animals and places, in their taking plant and animal names, in their belief in the transmigration of souls, in their kangaroo, emu, fire, wind and horse dances, and in their ancestral paths apparently like the songlines which mesh the mainland, Tasmanians thought like mainlanders. A songline or storyline is the path or corridor along which a creator ancestor moved to bring country into being. It is also the way of the ancestor's totem, the geographical expression of the songs, dances, paintings animating its country, and ecological proof of the unity of things. Strello quoted many Central Australian songs illustrating this. A verse for winnowing nutgrass bulbs is, "With lowered heads those yonder are holding aloft, with heads tilted sideways those yonder are holding aloft." This evokes winnowing ancestors and living women holding coolamons high to shield their eyes from dust, and nutgrass ready for harvest when its seed heads droop and tilt sideways. Part of a native cat ancestor song is, "The ring-necked parrots in scattered flocks, the ring-necked parrots are screaming in their upward flight, the ring-necked parrots are a cloud of wings, the shell parrots are a cloud of wings. Let the shell parrots come down to rest, let them come down to rest on the ground. Let the caps fly off the scented blossoms, let the blooms descend to the ground in a shower. The clustering bloodwood blooms are falling down, the clustering bloodwood blossoms nipped by birds, the clustering bloodwood blooms are falling down, the clustering bloodwood blossoms one by one." When bloodwood blossoms, clouds of ringnecks nip them, and shell parrots take advantage of this on the ground. The song cycle ensures that the cycle continues, reflecting the truth that the universe is made and needs ritual to maintain it. Every particle of land, sea and sky must lie on a songline, otherwise an ancestor can't have created it and it could not exist. Songlines threaded Australia, linking people of many groups, separated by great distances, sometimes thousands of kilometres. The native cat song went across language boundaries through the centre at least to Port Augusta in South Australia. Another song ran from the Kimberley to the centre, south to Port Augusta and then west to Albany and beyond. A third went from the Kimberley to Uluru to Cairns, though it may have lengthened recently. In 1882, Carl Lumholtz heard the same song in different languages on the Herbert in Queensland and 800 kilometres south at Rockhampton. Without knowing the language, people still recognised their song and its dances because each had independent, embedded characteristics: painting design, colour or symbol, and song, melody, rhythm or pitch. To survive its continental journey, each song must in theory be exactly repeated in at least most of these ways because it came from the dreaming and its creator ancestor is listening. Being born on or near a songline decides a person's most important totem, and being taught part of a song or dance legitimates being on the country it describes. People learn their songs, dances and country in minute detail. From far away they can discuss a tree or a soak and who is responsible for it. Senior people who learn more song expand their geographical and spiritual knowledge and acquire more rights to responsibilities, including the duty of singing in the country into life, sometimes beyond their boundaries. In turn, a properly sung song's plains, hills, rocks and waters care for its people and animals. Songlines are places of refuge, of comfort, of communion. They affirm a powerful message: the universe is one. All creation has a duty to maintain it at the risk of your soul. Keep things as they are. All things have a soul. Overlanding on the Murray in 1838, Joseph Hordern, quote, was much amused in the course of the day with the simplicity of 4 or 5 blacks who were standing together whilst a number of the cattle were walking toward the spot they occupied, snorting as they drew nearer to their black observers. It was quite evident that the natives looked upon the oxen as rational beings, for they gravely saluted them with their usual friendly salutation of Bobo Marud. Go, go, we are friendly, and waved grieved bows at them in a token of peace. The cattle, not at all appreciating these marks of respect, continued to move onwards when the poor fellows were obliged to run off, not daring to wait the nearer approach of visitors so rude and unceremonious. People know 3 truths about the soul. First, it confers shape. Human, animal or plant, something unseen passes recognisable features and personality from parent to child. This is the soul. Thus everything with shape has a soul. Plants, animals, rocks, wind, fire. If the soul leaves, the body dies and loses shape, but the soul remains in living offspring. In this way it continues forever, taking shape in later generations, as in earlier, though since time is irrelevant, not necessarily in that order. In some languages, especially in the south, the word for soul and flesh is the same, a reminder that flesh is a temporary chariot of a soul eternal. Second, since in death things lose shape, shape signifies life. So all things with shape must be living and all life must have a soul. Otherwise, how could things get and lose shape? If a thing exists, it has a soul, so it can choose to help or hinder. This is why ritual matters. Correct ritual persuades a soul or spirit to help. Third, since souls transcend time and death, and since, like creator ancestors, their number can't be infinite, there is no reason why a soul which confers one shape might not confer several. No reason why a soul leaving a fire need pass only to another fire, or a soul from one human pass only to another. On the contrary, a soul's ability to move from one chariot to another gives creation order and cohesion. It moves through the particular community of natural and supernatural things created by the same ancestor in the dreaming. It makes each part dependent on it and each the other for their existence. It makes them a congregation. A congregation forms a totem. Souls deny time, totems assert place. In English, totem can mean just a badge, but for Aborigines it is a life force, stemming from and part of a creator ancestor. An emu man does not have an emu as a mere symbol, he is emu. Of the same soul and the same flesh, he must care for emu and its habitat, and it must care for him. He is of its totem, not the reverse, and normally he can no more kill it than murder his grandson or grandmother, and since time is irrelevant, he risks both if he does. A man born along the track of the wallaby might say when seeing a wallaby, "That is me, that wallaby, that is me," or "That is my father." Ted Egan's brilliant song, "Poor Fella My Country," begins, "Oh, when I'm young boy, old man tell me, always look after this you country. You are a river, you are the sea, you are the rocks. Boy, this is your country." In March 1854, William Thomas was out with a celebrated Western Port black tracking 5 other blacks. The tracks had been lost some days at a part of the country where we expected they must pass. We ran down a creek. After going some miles, a bear made a noise as we passed. The black stopped and a parley commenced. I stood gazing alternately at the black and the bear. At length my black came to me and said, "Me big one stupid. Bear tell me, no go you that way." We immediately crossed the creek and took a different track. Strange as it may appear, We had not altered our course above 1.5 miles before we came upon the tracks of the 5 blacks and never lost them after. Everything has a totem. People, animals, stars, flue, lice, dust, frost, wind. Fire is an important totem which people must consult before unleashing. Dogs have totems and, like humans, are expected to conform to the rules on incest, adultery and choice of partner generally as laid down in the Dreamtime. The indiscriminate sexual behaviour displayed by dogs is a source of frequent embarrassment and annoyance to their owners. Totem members are responsible for each other more than for the rest of creation. Wenton Rubuncha explained, "My Altieri dreaming comes from Mpurawinga," that's Burtwell, north of Alice Springs. "Because I was found there, I am boss for Mpuere, maggot dreaming. My worship is maggots and witchetties and flies and itchy grubs, those hairy caterpillars that line up, those angentae, sawfly grubs that attach themselves in a mass to the river redgum trees. Those trees can't be cut down or there'll be lots of maggots, maggots everywhere." At Sydney, after 1788, the most determined resister of the English was Pemulwuy. He was not from Sydney Cove, but an inland group near Georges River. Why should he take on the strangers? Because his totem, like his name, Bimol, earth. That was what he was defending. Again, the longest war any people fought against settlers was on the Hawkesbury. There, in 1788, people now called Darug received Governor Phillip hospitably. But in the 1790s, his successors began concentrating farms on the flats. Darug may mean yam. The Hawkesbury's yams were a major totem and a staple famous among distant people. Governor Hunter may have glimpsed this when he wrote in 1793 that the Darug appeared to live chiefly on the roots which they dig up from the ground, for these low banks appear to have been ploughed up, as if a vast herd of swine had been living on them. We found the wild yam in considerable quantities, but in general very small, not larger than a walnut. They appear to be in the greatest plenty on the banks of the river. A little way back they are scarce. The farmers took land, yam, totem and trade. The clans fought back for 22 years until all were dead or hiding. Few Europeans understood why they fought so hard, but the yams say. They say not only, perhaps not mainly because they were food, they were totem allies needing help. Central Australian women recently demonstrated the power of this affinity when shown a model cash crop. Seeing bush tomatoes growing in neat horticultural rows was disturbing. Bush tomatoes, as with everything else in the world, are supposed to be made through ceremony, not grown by people. These captive plants may have seemed to the women to challenge the proper order of the world. In short, to be sacrilegious. These are not just foods, they are bound up in stories of creation, in kinship, and in multiple layers of personal and collective memory. Bush foods are an inseparable part of themselves. Skipped a couple of pages. Totems make clear how basic to the unity of creation an ecological perspective is. All must care for the land and its creatures. All must be regenerated by care and ceremony. No soul must be extinguished, no totem put at risk, no habitat too much reduced. That mandate, not the theology, made land care purposeful, universal and predictable. This is true for every part, even what might seem untouched wilderness, and even where ecologists today can't see why. The parks and puzzles Europeans saw in 1788 were no accident. Especially in the face of local omnipotence, a universal dreaming was a great intellectual achievement. By so thoroughly implanting means and incentives to shackle body and soul to the survival of all things in heaven and earth, it made environmental management obligatory. Its reach and power were evidenced in late 1830 when 8 Tasmanians and 2 white men were seeking northeast Tasmanians still free. One white, George Robinson, hoped to persuade free people to leave their land for Swan Island, just off the coast. His party saw a lot of burnt land and a few tracks, but no Tasmanians, until on 31 October they, quote, descried a smoke inland. From its appearance the natives was burning off. The party hurried forward and late that day found tracks and the bush on fire for a considerable distance. Next day they came up to the Tasmanians. 4 men and women were in a camp. In all, 69 people lived in the northeast, the hunted remnant of perhaps 700 people 20 years before. The camp was led by Manalajena. He knew whites killed men and children and stole women. He knew Robinson's party was seeking his, though not why, and he knew soldiers were hunting for the Black Line. The military cordon, bent on capturing every surviving Tasmanian, was underway. He knew too that smoke would betray his small band, yet still they fired the land, in the face of death, toiling to do what perhaps 10 times as many would once have done. Nothing shows so powerfully how crucial land care was. This was no casual burning, it was a mortal duty, a levy on the souls of brave men and women. This was repeated across Australia after 1788. Defying catastrophe, people tried above all to continue a spiritual and ecological life. Before 1788 they did this easily. In most seasons they had plenty of spare time and spent it nourishing the mind more than the body. Art was voluminous and intricate. Imagine a dot painting on sand, several metres square, composed of different coloured feathers, most of them tiny, stuck down with blood. Songs were long, corroborees might last months, initiations years. Not only in their parks did people think and act like gentry. This hardly reflects people constantly on the edge of want. They cannot have been the scavenging, chance-dominated savages Europeans thought them. A rich and time-eating spiritual life builds on abundance, not poverty. In the driest and most fire-prone continent on earth, abundance was not natural. It was made by skilled, detailed and provident management of the country. 1. The more fuel is reduced, the more easily fire is controlled, and up to a point the more useful it is. 2. Even hot fires leave unburnt patches, but the cooler the fire, the bigger the patches. 3. Burnt and unburnt patches benefit animals by balancing burnt bracket feed and unburnt bracket shelter country. 4. Patches form mosaics which can be adjusted in size by varying fire intensity. 5. Intensity can be regulated by fire frequency and timing. 6. Frequency and timing are local. They depend on local flora and local moderators like rain, wind, temperature and aspect. 7. The better people understand these variables, the more they can burn with purpose. They can move from limiting fuel to shaping country. 8. This lets them selectively locate fire-tolerant and fire-sensitive plants, situate and shape mosaics and resources conveniently and predictably, and arrange them in sequence so one supplies what another does not. 9. Australia becomes a single estate, varied in means but not ends. 10. Maintaining the estate is enforced by universal law. Warbles on a lot to YouTube. Ciao.